Welcome to Episcopals, bringing you the latest in faith-based advocacy from the Episcopal Church Office of Government Relations. Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining our program this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're from. I'm Alan Yarbrough with the Episcopal Church's Office of Government Relations, here with my colleague Susie, who's running tech for us today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This is a Zoom meeting. Please do make use of the chat. You can let us know where you're tuning in from, and you'll also be able to use the chat for any questions that you may have for us today. We are recording this session, so please be aware of that, and also know that we will be releasing, hopefully, the audio from this session today as an Episcopals podcast. Season 3 of our Episcopals podcast should be out soon, so please stay tuned for that. Really looking forward to leveraging that platform as we head closer to the 2024 U.S. election. I am pleased today to introduce our guest, Armani Eady, who serves as the National Coordinator of Election Protection at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Armani recently earned a Master's of Arts in Educational Transformation from Georgetown University, specializing in K-16 advocacy and policy. She's a scholar, an activist, an educator, and hails from her hometown of Harlem, New York. And she has a wealth of experience in politics, advocacy, diversity and inclusion, and more. The National Non-Partisan Election Protection Coalition works year-round to ensure that all voters have an equal opportunity to vote and have that vote count. It's made up of more than 300 local, state, and national partners, and election protection uses a wide range of tools and activities to protect, advance, and defend the right to vote. The Episcopal Church is proudly one of those national partners. So it's really wonderful to be here with you today, Armani, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Alan, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Armani Eady. I am a national coordinator here at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and really excited to speak to you all about our election protection efforts and our program, both nationally and in your states. And so we really appreciate, one, the Episcopal Church for even leading this effort, inviting us to talk about our partnership and what that looks like to get you all involved. So to start off today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is election protection. You may have heard it in your news. You may have heard it at your polling locations because we do have monitors from across the country, or you may have heard it for the very first time here. But today we'll go through what election protection is, who we are, what we do, and also how you can plug in. So starting off with basically who we are the largest nonpartisan election voter protection network in the country. So we do not engage in partisan politics. We help everyone, no matter where you are on a political spectrum. We train and recruit poll monitors on and before Election Day to assist voters. We think there's no better way to assist folks than assisting them in a peer-to-peer model. So we're happy about that. And we've recruited thousands of volunteers since our program's inception in 2001. And not only do we train poll monitors state by state, but we also litigate when and where necessary. So a big component of our program is ensuring that voters are protected through the legal system as well, to ensure that everyone is able to cast their ballot successfully. And so through the Lawyers Committee and other partnering organizations, we're happy to represent voters from all fractions to ensure that their votes are protected. And just a little bit about the National Lawyers Committee organization. We're based here in Washington, D.C. We are a legacy civil rights organization. First, we were requested by the president John F. Kennedy to really mobilize attorneys. It started out with mobilizing attorneys during the civil rights era to ensure that civil liberties were protected. And we started branching out into other issue areas, especially voting rights, where now we are a team of not just attorneys, not only attorneys, but we also are a team of organizers, which I am. And we work together to support folks across issues, and my issue is voting rights. Also, we engage in, of course, private and legal issues as well. So we work across the economic issues, we work in criminal justice, fair housing, just to name a few. And so we are happy to work and continue working with folks on the ground. And of course, the Election Protection Coalition was started in 2001. Which is really huge for us as we are a little past the 20-year mark of doing this program and seeing it expand across the country. Also to note that while the election protection program is across the country, the Lawyers Committee has recently recommitted ourselves to supporting Black and Brown voters in 14 target states. And so I'll go over a little bit of that as well. Now, I know you may have a question about how does EP ensure free and fair elections? As I mentioned, we deploy non-partisan volunteers across the country, but a big component of that is also having nonpartisan voter education and assistance given to eligible voters. So what that looks like is the GOTV. It's partnering with state and local organizations to do town halls. As you all know, and I'll talk about this a little later, the 2020 pandemic really showed us how important community was and how central social media was to ensuring that folks were getting the information to vote, right? And so we are able to work with state and local partners to develop programs to ensure that folks are knowledgeable about what the voting process is, how to register, when they need to register, and things like that. And then, of course, implementing strategies that help eliminate barriers to the ballot box. And so, what we do on the back end of all of this is that when we really assess what the great voting strategies are and how to implement them, we go to the legislature, we go to the state legislature and ask for things like early voting or mail-in drop boxes or absentee vote by mail, right? So we asked for voter-friendly measures based on what we're seeing on the ground and have been doing so for quite some time. And then, of course, sending advocates for voters on election day. So those are folks like the poll monitors that I spoke about that are equipped with the knowledge to ensure that voters have their questions answered, and also through the hotline, in which I'll speak about in a moment. Now, beyond what we do is really who we are. So I keep mentioning state and local, but also national organizations. We are comprised of about 300 plus coalition members, which we're very, very happy to say, because this work cannot be done without them. These are folks in the civil rights space. These are folks in the civic engagement space as well. And we come together nationally to talk about strategies that really improve voter access. We have different working groups, like, for example, accessibility and language, because we know that for our brothers and sisters in the language community who needs different materials translated, that we want to ensure that those materials are available to them and that they also understand the voting process in a language that's most comfortable for them. And then also from the accessibility and disability space as well, ensuring that polling locations are accessible, that our voting methods are accessible as well. And then we have folks that are over, our poll monitoring program for election days. And although we work year round, so municipal elections are very different than the general election, we ensure that there are year-round working groups to address that. And then most recently, which we know is of interest to a lot of people, is voter intimidation, right? So we do have a working group for voter intimidation that does rapid response and also mis and disinformation that is actually coming to be one of the top issues that we deal with nationally. And then just a little bit too about what we do. We work together. We ensure that folks are routing themselves to 866 Vote, where we take live calls Monday through Friday and extended times on election day. And then also we have the post-election advocacy, again, really debriefing what we've done during the year, how we can work together to inform better advocacy, and then also gear up for the next election cycles in our respective states. And so part of our national coalition, you have organizations like the NAACP, Campus Votes, and the ACLU, Common Cause, but also the Episcopal Church. We are very excited to have you all on board for this national partnership, and we're hoping that through our partnership we're able to, one, engage voters, engage a volunteer network, and really strengthen the representation on the ground for nonpartisan poll monitors who are really interested in helping one another. And so in this segment, I'm talking about what election protection and the Episcopal Church's partnership and collaboration can look like. So about our partnership, one, we want to welcome you all to the Election Protection Coalition. Our main focus in our collaboration is to ensure that we are routing the poll monitors in your state. So whether you are in Georgia or Mississippi or Nevada, wherever you are, we want to make sure that folks are plugging in. Also promoting the 866 Vote National Election Protection Hotline, and just ensuring that there are volunteers, not just on the big election days, but for down ballot and municipal elections as well. And so when thinking through why our partnerships are important, I want to give you all a few examples of where it has worked for us with our partners across the country. So in 2020, as I mentioned before, it was really a time where our partners truly stepped in and stepped up, because as you all know, that was during the pandemic, where our organizing and litigation had to pivot and our strategies had to pivot. And so we saw at first how limited a lot of our states were when it came to casting ballots. And so we advocated for mail-in ballots, right? And we saw a huge increase, especially in states like Georgia. We saw a huge increase in vote by mail there that was really positive for Georgia voters. We saw also the limits on voter engagement. And so that required us to do a lot of virtual trainings and town halls and know your voting rights things as well. And so we did see an increase in that. And it actually helped our voter advocacy moving forward from 2020, because now folks are really utilizing their virtual communities to mobilize folks as we're doing today. And then we saw temporary election law changes as well, which is really important to note, because while in 2020 we saw a lot of voter-friendly laws pass to meet the moment of COVID, in 2021, when we were in a better space in the pandemic, we saw those same laws, a lot of them roll back in the state legislatures. And so that is something, even to today, we're working with advocates and legal entities on the ground to ensure that voters remain protected and also knowledgeable about the changing voting landscape. And then, of course, there were threats to in-person voting. That's something since 2020 we've been very, very sensitive towards, and actually working with partner organizations on de-escalation And I know this is probably not the first time you all have heard about issues that happen at polling places on election day. And so we're happy to provide guidance to our state and local organizations on how to deal with that, especially that being part of our poll monitoring training now. We don't ask our poll monitors to engage if they feel uncomfortable, but we do have de-escalation strategies and a program developed to meet that as well. And then we also just saw other issues that came up as well, like restrictions on early voting. For example, in the state that I work in, Mississippi, we don't have early voting. In fact, we only have, the one voting day. And so we only have one time to get it right. And so, for example, of how our partnerships are successful, I can give you an example of this most recent election where Hinds County, in Hinds County, Mississippi, they ran out of ballots. It was a ballot shortage, which caused a huge issue with keeping folks in line, right? And so we were able to get, through our partnerships, a poll extension where we were able to ask the court to keep the polls open a little longer. But of course, we're going to run into the issue of having voters who have been on those lines that are very long stay in line. And so, thanks to our partners on the ground that were very responsive on election day, we managed to get folks in to vote and ensure that they casted their ballot successfully. And that's also thanks to our poll monitors on the ground that stayed extra and over to ensure that voters that had questions about the polling extensions, what that meant for them, were also there to help and support. And so in this area, as I explained to you, a lot of this has a lot to do with our partnerships and folks getting involved on the ground. And so there are a few ways. As I mentioned, in 2020, we had thousands of volunteers. I think it was one of our biggest programs to date. And that's a funny thing to say a little bit, because you would think in 2020, it was a pandemic and people wanted to stay home. But in fact, we found different ways and strategies to ensure that people were safe, but still able to volunteer. And so we had a roving poll monitoring program where people were able to stay in their cars, but also get out and be safe with their mask on and their PPE equipment to ensure that they were also helping voters. And so we recruited, between the hotline and the poll monitoring program, about 40,000 volunteers, which is huge when you consider how many folks go to the polls, especially on election day. It was really great to run that program across the country. And so we have many ways to get involved. One of them is grassroots volunteering. And I pause here to say that for grassroots volunteers, we recognize that not everyone at this moment has the right to vote, but you do have the right to volunteer, right? So our program also consists of not just those who can vote. It consists of students in high school. It consists of those who are not yet citizens but want to be engaged in the civic engagement process and helping voters. This also includes those who are system impacted and may not have their full voting rights recognized. And so we do open this program up to any and everyone who is nonpartisan and wanting to help their peers. So grassroots volunteering is definitely a way to do that. It requires you being a poll monitor and signing up for your shift. And you can do that through 866ourvote.org, where you go to your state's web or drop down. It'll give you a drop down menu of states, and you can click to sign up to be a volunteer. And then you can also discover like common issues as a grassroots volunteer. You all will be our eyes and ears on the ground, and we're reporting it into 866 Our Vote to ensure that we know what's going on as well. And then, of course, join us by also supporting the number, and not just through your volunteerism, but also calling the number, sending it to your family and friends, because that data is what helps us inform our advocacy, but also do issue spotting. And, our grassroots volunteers are how we run this program. We're able to do what we do because of the poll monitors and those on the hotline. We also have social media monitoring, which we partner with our partner Common Cause to do. And so there are several ways to get involved here. But what that is asking is that you would sign up for a shift and also sign up for a social media, or will be assigned a social media website to monitor. So whether that's Facebook or Twitter, which is now called X, you'll be able to do that. And that's really to see, like, okay, some people do tweet out or Facebook out what's happening at their polling location. And so we intake that data as well to ensure that if there's an issue happening, in Hinds County and someone raises it, but no one calls into the hotline, we're able to also triage those issues as well. So we do have a volunteer network that does that on election day. And then, of course, the hotline. So we run the English language hotline, so 866 our vote, but we also partner with other organizations to do other language hotlines as well. So the Spanish language, the Asian language, and Arabic languages as well. And these language hotlines also operate year round and assisting voters with these languages. And then, of course, hotline volunteers. So through 866 our votes, you could definitely help us by signing up to be volunteers. What I will say is that this opportunity is for legal professionals. So whether you are a law student, a former attorney, or you are a current attorney or a paralegal, but you do have to be in a legal profession to be a hotline volunteer. And this opportunity can be done remotely. 2020, prior to 2020, we were in person, but now, given the climate of the pandemic and everything that happened in 2020, we shifted to a fully remote system. So that means that we can have a lot more volunteers, but also you can volunteer from the comfort of your own home. No matter what time, we'll give you a shift. You get to choose your shift when you sign up, and we'll plug you in with the resources that you need. And a lot of people like this option because they can do it from the comfort of their couch, we say, and still assist voters. And even if you wanted to try it before Election Day in November, you can. There are several elections happening across the country. And so if you wanted to try it out to see if that's something you would want to volunteer for in November, you can do that. And so next steps for me, before I open it up for questions, is help recruit, right? And also join in on the election protection, network, because we are really an expansive coalition. There's always opportunities to plug in and engage. And so recruiting of poll monitors is really important. I definitely understand that your membership is throughout the country. Your members are active. And so ensuring that they're plugging into their state's resources is one thing. Sharing the sign up links, which if you go to 866ourvote.org, you're able to plug into your state specific sign up for volunteers. And then also you can do your shifts and everything there as well. And then, of course, promoting 866 Our Vote, because without that data, none of this can get done. And so I will pause there and say thank you. And if you had any additional information, again, my name is Armani Eady. You can email me here, or you can go to 866ourvote.org, where you'll also find materials on how to vote, the upcoming elections in your states, and also how to plug into our volunteer network. So I will pause there and pass it back over to Alan to open
Wonderful.
Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Armani. Really, really appreciate this overview. And it's information in some ways I know quite well, just being on the regular calls that you all do that are so helpful for staying informed. And so I'm glad that we're able to expand your audience here. And I'm seeing some names on got about 60 or so folks on, and seeing the names of folks here, knowing who some of them are, just really excited for them to have more opportunity to engage and join in this work. And then in terms of the chat and where people are coming from, I mean, you've got Kansas, Maryland, Florida, Ohio. So North Carolina folks well represented, which I'm originally from North Carolina, so happy to see that. Um, and then folks out west, Arizona, Washington, Texas, San Diego. So just a lot of folks here and from across the country. And I think I want to emphasize to people listening, and to those who'll be tuning into this as a podcast. Our work here in the Office of Government Relations, we're a national partner. We can make a commitment to this work with election protection, but can only do so much. And really, our value comes from from you all, from the local volunteers, from the local people who are willing to step up and to be a part of this work. So, Armani, thank you for showcasing the opportunities that are here. And if it's okay with you, we'll turn to a couple of audience questions.
Sure.
All right, awesome. So, one quickly is the League of Women Voters in the U.S. a member of the coalition?
They are, yes. I work with the league in Mississippi and South Carolina, but yes, they are part of our national network.
Very cool. And I know we've got quite a few volunteers with our office who are quite experienced with the league, which is great. Um, and then I appreciated how you noted that people who don't even have access to vote for various reasons, are still able to participate in this work. That's something we've tried to push in our own messaging as well, and in part because of the example that you all have in doing that. So I'm wondering if you have any specific recommendations for some of those audiences, and maybe more specifically for folks who are under 18.
On how to get involved.
Yeah, on how to get involved.
Right. So from the election protection lens, as I mentioned earlier, it is one, signing up to be a volunteer the same way you would sign up to be a volunteer for anyone else that wasn't necessarily part of the communities that you identify with, right? So we treat every volunteer the same. Now, if there's an issue area like being a system impacted voter, for example, we do have a national working group that works on access to the ballot box for system impacted voters. And so if that is a place you want to plug in, I'm happy to connect with you about that, because I feel like if you're part of that community, you should be at the forefront of the work and how it gets done. And so I'm very sensitive, and we are as a coalition sensitive to centering the voices of folks most impacted.
Sure.
And same with language and accessibility as well. I'm over that working group, and so I'm also happy to plug folks in there.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, and I know, language is something. Obviously, Spanish is, I'm imagining, is the most common, but it's not limited to that. And looking at new immigrant communities, looking at we're encouraging folks in as Episcopalians to think about how their church is serving not just the people in their pews, which sometimes also are multilingual or are not primarily English speaking, but how they're serving their communities. And that often means looking at immigrant communities and engaging with them. So really grateful for the resources you all provide there, and from the language perspective. It's a question about someone from an all vote by mail state, which I know is the case in a number of states, and has perhaps shifted some since the pandemic. But I'm wondering if you've noted any issues in particular regarding all vote by mail states. Is there anything unique to those?
No, actually, we've seen an increase in usage of vote by mail. If anything I've seen is voters understanding that it's available to them, and how to do it. Now, one thing I will say about election laws and election processes, it varies state by state, right? So while one person may be experiencing not knowing or not having enough information about vote by mail, there's another person in another state may be experiencing something different. But it's usually down to, how do I do this? What should I be expecting? Is there a tracking system that I can use to ensure that my vote has been received successfully? And so those are things that we get calls about, especially from states that do have that method of voting.
Sure, sure. And then Sally's asked, since you probably don't have enough volunteers to monitor every voting location, how do you prioritize which locations to monitor?
Right. So we work with state and local partners to help identify tiered precincts. So we tier it. So
Sure.
tier one, tier two, tier three. And based on priority and where we've seen issues in previous elections, we kind of like organize our volunteers that way, because we know like there's something happening at this precinct. Maybe we should put folks there. But also, there are some states that allow you to kind of choose which precinct you want to volunteer at. So, again, it's based on state by state what the assignments look like. And that's literally led by the state and local groups.
Sure. And so, I mean, I think to help folks with context, that's part of the benefit or leverage that election protection has, right? Is having these state level organizations to point people to, so that they can get that granularity, that specificity in this work. Is that right?
Yes, correct. And
Yeah.
also to add, on election days, not just the major statewide election days, but even municipal. And the reason why I keep talking about the hotline is that usually on any given election, there are a group of folks made up of state and local partners who do this work year round, and what we call the command center. And we're in this command center triaging issues as we see them come in. So, for example, in South Carolina, in the most recent election in February, there were two primaries, the Republican and Democratic primaries. I was on the ground, right? I was in the states,
Hmm.
triaging issues as they came in, while our poll monitors were out and doing work, right? And they were calling into the hotline, and from the hotline, we're able to see on the back end what's happening. So I should note that you're not just promoting a hotline or going to be a volunteer just for the information to get lost. There are real people on the back end triaging issues in real time, which is why it's so important to have folks out there on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's a question about the cleaning of voter rolls. I'm wondering if you can comment on that and sort of, that is a necessity in some places, but obviously is problematic in other instances.
Yeah, so we are actually experiencing that in a slew of states.
Mm.
But voter maintenance, the roll maintenance is required by federal law. And so there's nothing we can do with that. And let me just say it from a more positive approach. Um, Cleaning up voter rolls just means we want to ensure that everyone on this list is active. Folks pass away, people move and forget to renew their registration. It's a series of reasons why people do that. But we've also seen it on a flip end be used to intimidate voters. And so we're very, very aware that um, voter purging is happening, and not a lot of folks know, like, is my name on a list? What do I do to respond? And so our role is to provide that education on how you stay active and updated with your information, so that on election day, especially in states like Mississippi, where you only have that one day to get it right, that you're prepared going into election day, on that you're current and you're active and you're ready to vote.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. And, is helpful context as well to know that it's a part of the election functioning is keeping the voter rolls clean, but there are concerns when that's overused or misused in particular contexts. Um, there's a question here as well from Wanda about whether or not is election protection involved in the restoration of voting rights, specifically for those coming out of the penal or parole systems.
Yes, we are. So, as I mentioned before, we do have a national jail voting working group, and then also like for disenfranchised voters as well. And so, yes, we are, I don't want to say we're leading the charge because there are so many other organizations that have been in that work for a very long time. But as a coalition, yes, that's part of our buckets of work.
Awesome. Wonderful. And I'm seeing, I just hope that today leads to more folks volunteering with someone in y'all's orbit, in y'all's environment. And I'm seeing a few people actually that have commented and said that they have done so in a couple of ways. So really cool to see that, and thank you all for chiming in with your words of encouragement for others on the others listening in. Um, Jessica's wanting to know a bit more about social media monitoring. I think that was probably from the Common Cause comments that you made around misinformation. And if I could add myself, if you can comment on it, are there new dimensions or what are the new challenges with AI and the intersection with misinformation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, in my capacity as the person who is supposed to mobilize folks, is really for the recruitment of the different options we have available to us. So, for example, social media monitoring, as I mentioned, is between a slew of social media platforms, even TikTok. Like TikTok is a thing now, right? So, like monitoring these platforms to hear about voter experiences in real time and triaging them. And that is a remote opportunity. So once I receive the link from Common Cause, I can send it to you, Alan, to kind of disperse
Perfect.
after this. But just like the hotline would work, it's just doing intake, literally copying and pasting, whether it's a tweet, the link to a tweet or a video in real time during your shift. So we can see it on the back end that's what it is. Now, as far as your question about AI and misinformation and disinformation, is it an issue? I think just generally misinformation and disinformation is an issue.
Right.
And AI, my comments on that is that AI is a unique space that we don't know fully yet, right?
Yeah.
And so there are systems in place that we have to ensure that there's fact checking in real time. Um, but I would leave that to my colleagues in that space to kind of comment on and follow
Okay.
up with you about. But I do know that that's something that we're running up against.
Okay. Thanks for touching on that. And again, for folks listening, we have had other programs, and we'll continue to do other programming around misinformation and AI. But Armani, appreciate you commenting on that. I know it's
Space.
a whole space, and it's also not. I mean, the AI element is new, but as you alluded to or mentioned, like misinformation is not like it's is a problem. It's been a problem. AI in some ways is just a tool that can exacerbate it. Um, there's a question here which I believe I could answer, but we'll share anyway because I think it's helpful. Someone about promoting the hotline and the election protection website on our social media accounts, even if they would like to continue to post partisan messages.
Yeah, so you know, individuals who, my take on it is if you are an individual, yes, but a partner organization, no. Like we wouldn't expect that from a nonpartisan national partner. But individuals, you're able to do what you want to with your social media, and we respect that.
Yep, yep, that makes sense, and I'd echo that as well. If so from our office, from any individual Episcopal parish, diocese organization, we're all nonprofits, and we need to keep our election engagement nonpartisan. So we shouldn't be doing that from our institutional accounts, but like our Armani and saying, for your personal ones, that's different. Um, Next question here. We'll take a couple of more. Um, how are you able to sort of resist the organizations or the push that has led states to withdraw from the Electronic Registration Information Center?
That's I would feel like that's a question more for my colleagues,
Sure,
because again, my role is more of the organizing and mobilizing. But I could follow up and
that's fine. That
I get
works.
that answer.
That works. I appreciate that. And then what are some of the next steps? I know you touched on sort of volunteer opportunities. What are some of the next steps that people in this call can do, either connecting themselves or connecting others, in their friends, parishioners, others in their orbit who may be interested in joining this work?
Yeah, so right now, what you all can do is, again, one, follow us on social media, 866R Votes, or at 866R Vote on X, and also on Instagram. We also have Facebook, and also following the Lawyers Committee's work as well, because we also put resources there. It will be saving the 866R Vote number in your phones, texting it, I say, to 3 to 5 people. So they are just ready and equipped on election day. It's also signing up on the 866R Vote website to become a poll monitor or a hotline volunteer. And again, if this is something you want to try before November, there are a slew. I will look at the elections happening in your state first. And I'm sure there are programs that are being run for those municipal elections, and giving it a try, trying it out, bring a friend, especially the young people. We love to see high school students out there helping us as well. So plugging in there. And then also just amplifying. If you see issues happening, before election day or on election day, don't be afraid to message us. You can text us at 866R Vote, and then also call us as well. And then we have WhatsApp too. So those are methods, we can use for reporting.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this. One question for myself: what sort of gives you life? What motivates you in this work?
Oh, well, you all, the people. I I truly, truly love the work that I do. You mentioned, I got my master's in educational policy and advocacy, and then I came into voting work. And what brought me here was my students. What kept me here was the people I got to work with each and every day. And so it keeps me motivated to continue voting rights. I'm still young, so we'll see. We'll see in the next 10 years. But for
Yeah.
right now, yeah, I think it's the people that keeps me going and excited.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time today. Very much appreciate it. As a reminder to those listening in, we have 866R Vote, the election protection resources throughout our own website and our own promotional materials for our Vote Faithfully election engagement. We have an election engagement toolkit on our website as well. And then for those, I know some on the listening in are already involved, but we have our own Episcopal Election Activator Volunteer Network. Applications are still open. If you are interested in joining this work, please fill out that application. It's hopefully a great chance, a great cohort of people to support each other, to information share. And it's absolutely a place where we are promoting actions like volunteering with one of the election protection organizations that are in this network. So again, thank you all for tuning in. Armani, thank you for the work that you do, and we look forward to the months ahead.
Yeah, thank you all.
The Office of Government Relations aims to represent the policy priorities of the Episcopal Church to the U.S. government in Washington, D.C., and to influence policy and legislation on critical issues, all while highlighting the voices and experiences of Episcopalians and Anglicans globally. The office facilitates the Episcopal Public Policy Network, a grassroots network of Episcopalians engaged in the ministry of public policy advocacy. Take action and learn more by following the links in the description. The Episcopals podcast is produced by the staff of the Office of Government Relations, with the support from our podcast engineer, Ellie Singer, and project manager, Chris Sikama. Thanks for listening, and join us next time on Episcopals.